Welcome to the Backpacking Light podcast. I'm Andrew Marshall. Today's episode is a cottage industry interview. In this series of episodes, we chat with the small companies making big ripples in the outdoor industry, trying to glean what makes them unique or successful or impactful. Today, I'm talking with Julie and Henry Mosier from Food for the Soul. Food for the Soul makes healthy backpacking meals with flavors drawn from the diverse cultures of the Pacific Northwest. I'm a fan of their cold soak options in particular. In this interview, we get into how and why they started, the nuts and bolts of running a food production business, the importance of mentorship, and I even have a bonus bikepacking tangent with Henry. Enjoy. Okay, Henry and Julie Mosier, welcome to the Backpacking Light podcast.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. So to get started with, I want you just to give me your elevator pitch for your company. Like, who are you guys? What do you do? And what makes you stand out from the ever-increasing field of cottage industry food manufacturers?
Okay, so...
Excellent question.
It's an excellent question. We don't have this rehearsed by any means. Well, I mean, we probably know it like the back of our hands. We probably said it a million times, but who answers what and that kind of thing. I'll just throw this out there. We are a mother and son backpacking food company. So that's, you got that whole family value thing that's super fun. We've been working together and friends together and mother and son together forever, And through that process, we have just like by virtue of loving making food and having food be such an integral part of our family and the way that we like bring people and friends and family together at the dinner table, we're such foodies. And that translated so well when I started backpacking more seriously, like 8 years ago. I asked my mom to rehydrate or create dehydrated meals for me and my friend, and like literally the first meal that we made was a cold soak called the Triple Peanut Slaw. And I said, Mom, you have something here. We should probably take this in a direction of potentially making a business out of it. So fast forward 5 years, whatever it was, we started Food for the Soul with, I want to say 6 products. And we still sell all but one of them today. And with an increasingly growing lineup, and what we've really honed in on through the growth of our business is catering towards dietary accessibility. So there is this population that is increasing in size because people are realizing how important it is to take care of your bodies, right? Whether your restriction is gluten or dairy or whatever it may be, We've targeted that by going vegan and gluten-free with all of our meals, even though we ourselves are not. What we realize is that opens the window and the door of opportunity for so many people. And we really found that as we were going through the beginning stages of our business, when we would get messages from people saying, thank you so much. Now I can finally spend multiple days in the backcountry. Now I can really enjoy the time out there without carrying 5 pounds of like fresh vegetables. Like literally that's what somebody said. It's like I was carrying like 5 pounds of fresh vegetables, and it was like, wow, that's intense. That's crazy. yeah. That's like too much. So not such a short elevator pitch, I apologize, but that's a big part of what we do.
Let's dive into some of your recipes and your products a little bit. Maybe start with maybe this is a 2-part question. Maybe each of you can tell me what's your favorite meal that you make and why. And then maybe you can put your heads together and come up with what is a meal that you feel like encompasses your vision as a company, like you're a keystone product that really sums up what you're trying to accomplish.
That's a great question. That second question, we've never been asked that before.
That's a good one.
I love the meals that we make, and I created all of them. So asking me which is my favorite is always a really hard thing for me to answer because I don't make food that I don't love. But I will say that every day when the kitchen is cooking, we taste the food before it goes into the dehydrator. We taste the food when it comes out of the dehydrator. And sometimes it's been a while since I've had that particular meal, and I'm reminded why I love it. Sometimes I haven't had the lentils, for example, in a while, and I taste it. It's like, oh yeah, that Dijon red wine dressing really packs that, vibrancy, the contrast with the earthiness of the lentils. That's why we make this dish. So I'm sorry, I cannot pick a favorite. My favorite is usually the last one I had.
Yeah. Well, let me specify a little bit for Henry then. So Henry, when you're headed out for a 3-day trip and you know that day 3 is going to be hard and you want a meal that's going to like lift your spirits and is going to be that special treat for you at the end of a hard day, which of your lineup do you choose?
Man, I'm going to be so lame for you because it really depends. It really depends. It's like time of year. So what's the weather? Is it really blisteringly hot out? I'm going to have a cold soak. It's going to be a triple peanut spa, zesty miso, or the curried cauliflower. Interchangeable with the 3 cold soaks that we have. But actually, what's so funny is like I've really taken to cold soaking the lentils. I leave it. I bike pack rather than hike these days, but I leave the lentils hydrated on top of my bike handlebars, and I just bike around for 30 minutes. It's like the sun kind of heats it up a little bit, and it rehydrates, and it's kind of like a semi-cold lentil salad, and it's freaking amazing. Okay, so I will give a shout out to our new meal, the Biscuits and Gravy. That is so soul satisfying, heartwarming, so unbelievably like just comfort food. Just makes you feel good. Like, all right, my belly is like satiated and I want to take on the world. Sort of just, oh man, maybe that's the one. Now that I think about it out loud, that's probably the one.
That's exciting. You guys didn't have that meal when I tested a bunch of your products, and as a Southerner, I have deep feelings and opinions on Biscuits and Gravy, so I can't wait to give that a try. You use mushrooms in that, right? That's how you kind of get the umami with the vegan. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. It's only been out for what, 3 weeks, a month?
Yeah, just about a month.
Yeah.
When
I was testing your products for a big vegetarian and vegan roundup that we did, I will echo your thought there, Henry, that your slaws and your cold soaks were what really stood out to me in terms of something that maybe not many other people are getting right. Is there a way that you approach those dishes specifically that kind of gives you the edge? Like, and I guess maybe a related question: how do you iterate these things? Are you cooking and then testing? Do you test in the field? Are you looking at texture? Are you looking at time to rehydrate? Like, what's your process?
So yes to all of the above.
Yeah.
But do we iterate these? Yes, and it's absolutely the favorite part of what I do for the company, and I'm in the middle of it right now. Everything starts with an idea. In fact, funny story about the mushrooms and gravy and biscuits. Biscuits and Gravy. I just make this stuff. I don't name it. I got that idea 3 years ago. I know exactly where I was. I was headed onto Forest Service Road 12, taking a friend on our first backpacking trip, and whatever we were talking about, it popped into my head that I should make biscuits and gravy. And I literally pulled over, said, sorry, friend, and called Henry and said, we need to do this. That was 3 years ago. That one took longer to get to market than normal, but we would never put anything to market that we weren't completely 100% stoke level of 10. So in terms of the iterative process, it starts with an idea, and then I write a recipe, and then Henry and I look at that recipe, and does it have the macros that you need? Does it have, what we want people to get out of it? Can I make it for a cost that's reasonable? In a volume that's reasonable, because nutritional density is also a factor. It shouldn't weigh, 8 or 9 ounces in order to give you those calories and protein and so forth that you need. So can we do that? And then I take it into the kitchen for just kind of a proof of concept. And the whole team sits down and tastes it. And then we decide, is this something I should pursue? Usually by the time I've gotten it into the kitchen, the answer is usually yes. But every now and then it's like, I don't know if we're going to get there.
Yeah, we've had a few in the last year. Granted, like Julia's brain is so packed full of recipe ideas. It's insane. I swear every week the other week we were like, all right, Julie, like you need to slow down. You're kind of stressing yourself out. You're making too many meals and you have too many expectations, and it's really okay. Like we're doing good. And she's like, okay. And then like the next day, I kid you not, the next day she like sends me a photo from the kitchen. She's like, I'm testing this new recipe. I'm like, sick. But it's actually, I can't tell you what it is, but I'm so excited about it. Like when she did like, round 1, I was like, nailed it. All right, cool. We need to get it, like we're stoke levels at an 8. We need to get a 9 or a 10 before we can launch it to market, but we're so close.
Yeah.
So sometimes Julie knocks out of the park in the first round, but then sometimes it's like 7 rounds.
Yeah. And or I had one the other day, this year. I love the way it tasted fresh. It was great. It had so many things going for it, but I could not get it to rehydrate in a timely manner. And no matter what I did to it, I couldn't. And so I put it on the shelf. It's like, I'm not going to spend more time on that one when, that's just not acceptable from a consumer standpoint. So It's back on the shelf, and maybe I'll come back to it someday and maybe I won't because 100 other ideas will crowd my mind. But the meal that Henry's referring to, we're going to taste round 3 tomorrow as a team.
Okay.
That's exciting.
I know.
Yay.
And we will get it to the point where we believe it's market ready, and then we will send it to a very select group of people to taste it out in the field. And once they've tasted it and they've given their feedback, we start kind of putting it with, I take it into the kitchen with the team so they can experience it at a near production level, and they'll give me all sorts of feedback. It's like, well, if we, this is really hard. What if we do this? Because that's another consideration is, can we actually produce it in a reasonable period of time? And then it goes out to a wider audience, a group of testers. And once we get their feedback, we make any tweaks we need to, and off it goes. And it goes to Henry's department where he figures it out.
Oh man, so I got so many questions. I guess for the sake of a clean transition, Henry, what is it specifically that you're doing for the company?
It's like the customer side of it, marketing, sales. What does the package look like? How do we hype it up? And in so many ways, like I'm the first pass fail on like whether we even attempt a meal. Like the team is so involved, and I'm not going to discount that. They're so involved. But if I'm like, that's a really like cool idea, but it's not. I have to like make my own judgment about what people will enjoy. It's yeah.
I've gotten shot down several times before things even get to the kitchen. And that's his role. Yeah. That's his job. I mean, and I trust that in him. Yeah.
I may not always be right, so I'm sorry if there's something that Julie made that the public will never know about, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah. No,
It strikes me that level of absolute trust might be an interesting facet of your company in the terms that you guys are family. And do you see that as something that's unique that maybe your competitors don't have?
I think so.
I would imagine.
I mean, I honestly, it's hard to imagine this level of trust in a business partner besides Henry. I think part of it is that we do know each other really well. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we know where we complement each other. And so, I think that's to never have to second guess that or doubt it is I think pretty unique.
Or even like if we need to communicate through something and call each other out, like it's really easy. We are so like blessed and so lucky to have such a strong relationship. Like I kid you not, it's pretty incredible that we can still be friends and business partners and mother and son and all of the above and be so supportive for each other and maybe annoy each other on a regular basis, which is why I work from home a little bit more than I used to. But nonetheless, like we're so tight, so it's powerful.
So on the flip side, are there any pitfalls to having this level of connection in a family-run business that you maybe could give our listeners to try to watch out for?
I think that we have to work at maintaining those different aspects of the relationship. And there are times where it's like, okay, the business is hard, it's stressful. Maybe we we don't spend as much time together personally. So there are definitely times where there's some, give and take there. A couple weeks ago we had lunch, and I don't think we talked about the business at all, which is a gift to me. It's like we can sit down in the middle of the day, go have lunch together, and not talk about work. That's a good sign to me. But there's definitely times where it's like, you know what, we're just going to back off a little bit on other aspects of the relationship, maybe not spend personal time together, focus on what's going on here. So it is work. Yeah. I think the fact that we actually can manage those different aspects of relationship and separately is pretty remarkable, but it's not easy.
Yeah. There's a burnout that happens every fall. So we get through the summer season, we sell all the food that we possibly can. Sales start to drop in the fall, and we just I personally need to hang my hat. Like, I have so many other parts of my life that I really need to invest myself in. And I tend to distance myself from the business pretty hard. So Julie, we've really found that this year. Like, Julie had to reel me back in, throw the line out and reel me back in. Like, hey, Henry, I kind of need you back. I'm like, oh, thank you for saying so. I appreciate the communication. So that would be the key there is when there's these rifts and there's these divides in partnership and business, that the communication and just being really transparent with each other is 100% everything.
I've talked to, this is I think the third or fourth one of these cottage industry interviews that I've done, and a recurring theme is that people create a business out of backpacking in the outdoors because they love it and it's a part of their life that they really love, and then suddenly they're small business owners and they're free to work whatever 90 hours per week they want, So I'm curious as to how you manage that and how you manage having a small business that's outdoor focused and also still getting outside and living that side of your life.
I think that Henry is much better at it than I am. I also think that I have always worked a lot, regardless of whether it was my business or not. That is something for me that is a passion, working. So I'm much more inclined to throw myself in and stay there. Not necessarily to my benefit or the businesses, but that's my inclination. Henry has a stronger need for that balance and is much better at carving it out. In fact, he just got back from a week being gone, doing what he loves to do. So I'd like to learn how to do that better, and Henry is a great example of managing that. But I'm not.
Yeah, this is it's unfair, but my youth and vitality kind of helps. I'm 29 years old. I bartend on the side, and that's what pays my wages. We cut my wages to pay the employees more, and I'm like, it's fine. I'll just moonlight and bartend and make my money. I'm actually probably making more money than I would through the business. Yeah, just being real. Small business ownership. It's not, you're not making the big bucks. That's for sure. So, having that having focus, especially a job where I don't have to take it home. I show up, I make some drinks, I talk to some people. I work at a restaurant, so I don't get out at 3 a.m. I get out at 10. And it's so pleasant for me. So to be able to disassociate in a way, in a healthy way, cognizant and a controlled way of disassociation. There's unhealthy disassociation, and then there's I'm going to do this with intention. And so that's a bit more of what I do. The end result is that I actually work closer to 20 to 30 hours a week at Food for the Soul. I think, especially as my schedule ramps up, I'll be pushing 60 hours a week between the two. But what I find is that because I have this ADHD and I've always worked better under pressure, if I have less time to work on Food for the Soul and I have these pressing projects, then I can just dive into those, get those, knock those out. And then luckily also, since we're now going on year 5 of our business, I can outsource social media management to our wonderful gal Kimberly, and now I got Sean writing blogs, and I've got newsletters being together. I'm starting to be able to push these areas of our business out to other people. I'm still very much hands-on and managing, but not in the development, which takes time. And so it sucks, you spend the first years of your business, like trying to do everything and wear all the hats and like trying to figure everything out, and like you're not really like good at any one thing. You know,
you got multiple learning curves going on all the time.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, Henry works at home for that reason. It's distracting here. You know, this is our office, our kitchen, our warehouse, order fulfillment. Everything is in the same roof, which I love. I love the energy. I love being around, you know, the kitchen, whether I'm in it or not. That's great. But for Henry, that's a distraction. When he's got to be uber focused on getting his stuff done, you know, and it's actually, I think in some ways better for us that we're not in the office together all the time. You saw, you know, I think our space, it's a pretty small office. We don't need to be here together every day.
I want to take a 30-second sidetrack, and Henry, I want to know what you were up to for a week. Were you bikepacking?
I just got back from a 24-hour mountain bike race in Tucson. Yeah,
nice.
Dude, it's so fun. I just play bikes all day, like nonstop play bikes. It's such a wild ride. And so I love bikepacking. That's what got me into like endurance, like racing. But they're very similar. The benefit of 24-hour mountain bike races is they're loops. So this was a 16-mile loop, and I could either do 1 or 2 laps, is typically the way I'd run it, come back to camp, get my food, get my water, you know, like charge my bike lights, my GPS computer, whatever I needed to do, stretch, foam roll, I don't know. You know, like you kind of evaluate lap by lap and then just keep going. So for a 24-hour period, you cram as many laps in as you can. It's so fun.
Yeah, that's a very fascinating race format to me. There's ultra running formats that are similar. So I promise we'll get back to food, but I love bikepacking and I love mountain bikes. So we're going to talk about this for a second.
Cool.
What's your bikepacking rig, and what's your like racing mountain bike arrow in your quiver?
Currently one and the same. I think I have 6 bikes, but the one I really ride the most, it's kind of old. It's an aluminum 2017. I say old in quotations.
Yeah, it's bike old, I guess.
It's bike old, yeah. With the way that the industry grows and changes every single year, it's insane. Yeah. So it's, in relevant terms, it's old. But it was designed as a 27.5 plus, which is like a larger, higher volume tire, for those who don't know. You know, like very like fun, agile, cross-country-esque bike. I've since thrown a larger, skinnier tire, so a 29 on the front and a 27.5 plus in the back, which makes it kind of like whippy fast in the back and then fast, high, like good rollover on the front. I'm just playing with that a lot right now. I really like the plus size platform for bikepacking. It's got a really large triangle in the frame, so I can still pack a ton of gear in there. But yeah, it's called the Cannondale Beast of the East. They discontinued the model. They don't make it anymore. What I'm looking at, though, is the Y Cycles El Jefe. It's a titanium bicycle they're based out of somewhere in Colorado. It's so fun. It has like so many opportunities to like, you know, make it a single speed bicycle through sliding dropouts or, you know, like whatever. And it's designed by a pro racer who's like pretty well renowned within the ultra endurance racing category. So much like skateboards, how the pro will get like a proceeds of the skateboard deck, this bike company Y Cycles did the same thing with this bicycle. Like every bike you buy, Jeff El Jefe gets a bit of proceeds. So I really like what they're doing with that. I got to hop on one of those bikes over this Tucson race to figure out what my size was and talk to the guys, and I'm sold. Like I want to buy that bike now.
And bike bag company of choice, storage option company of choice?
I'm kind of all over the board. I use Revelate, Rogue Panda, Salsa Designs. Those are the 3 that I primarily use. I'm not too loyal, to be honest. You know, like if it looks cool, I'll try it out. That's like, you know, much like most of the outdoor industry in general, like there's so much innovation happening at all times. So bikepacking.com and the Radavist are really good resources for keeping up with that kind of stuff. And they're just like constantly doing gear reviews, and like all these like niche small brands are able to pop on there and just like get their stuff out there in the world. I think a lot like Backpacking Light, you know, like there's just like this massive exposure through community and through review and everything that like allows little cottage brands to like get the spotlight for a second. And it's amazing. And it really pushes that innovation and drive in the industry to like be creative and problem solve and like really like address the, create solutions for like what people need out of bicycles. Because especially with bicycles, like there's a million different ways to ride a bicycle. It's not just pedaling. Like there's you can interact with so many different environments and so many different styles. So I really like that that's what's happening within the bike industry right now.
All right, I may email you later and talk about plus size bike packing platforms. I ride a 29 plus single speed, but it's crazy. It's insane. I do a lot of pushing it uphill. Okay, I want to use that to get back to Food for the Soul, and I want to move into talking about kind of the logistics of how you guys started from a small company and got to where you are now, because the outdoor industry is so fascinating because these cottage brands are just people who are passionate about gear or products and they love the outdoors, and they're not necessarily people who have, business degrees. So I would imagine that there's a pretty big learning curve for you guys. And I'm interested in exploring some of the pitfalls you ran into, some of the lessons you learned in taking the company from an idea to where you are now.
Yeah. On my side, I knew food and loved food, but I certainly had never done food manufacturing before. So the whole first year was just this big puzzle. How do we do this? Oh, that didn't work. Well, let's try this. And it was, I sort of pity our first employees because it was every day. It was like, I don't know. I'll figure it out, but I don't know. Or, yeah, we did it that way yesterday, but we're doing it this way today. And that was very hard for me because I tend to be a fairly, linear, organized person, background in logistics and operations. And so I think that was maybe my saving point was, I like puzzles. But yeah, all of that whole first year, I don't think I ever felt like my feet was underneath me, that I actually knew what I was doing. So definitely, just from my side, definite learning curve. But we started in a community kitchen. So never cooked from our houses or anything. Our order fulfillment was in Henry's garage. Our office was in his house, mainly because when I was at my house and he was at his house, we would call each other like 15 times a day and like, this is stupid, So we made our office in his house and order fulfillment there too. But we've always cooked in a community kitchen, always in a commercial kitchen. And we outgrew that about a year before we moved. Moved into our own facility in July 2020. But we had outgrown that kitchen before that, and we were really pushed. So being in our own facility has given us a lot of opportunity to, I almost want to say, relax into our role. We have the time and space to do that. It's not a huge space. It's a small space, but we figured out how to make it work. But it's given us that chance to all be under the same roof. And so a lot of the complications that occurred as a result of our warehouse being in one space and our office and order fulfillment being in a space and the kitchen being in a space that we had to leave like we'd found it, like we'd never been there every time we left. All of those things changed, when we moved in here to an environment that is really cohesive in terms of the team. That really, we do a lot of problem solving together. The team is very involved in, from development to every aspect of how we do things. And they're constantly making improvements to what we do, which I love and treasure. But I think it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years in before Henry and I maybe looked at each other and went, okay, it feels like we know what we're doing. For a hot minute, it feels like we know what we're doing, but there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, never ending, truly. So I'm gonna throw one more little hype thing in there. Under our new roof, we designated this little 15 square foot area to be the couch chill area. So there's always snacks on the table. There's always some sort of candy or chips or whatever. make the employees happy. There's, like we just like huddle around there, and the team always, they don't have to take lunch together, but they pretty much always do. And there's like this community building that's really like just flourished within the last year and a half of us being in this facility.
I was just going to tell Henry, actually, and you a quick story about our couch, our employee area. We had a new employee start yesterday, and he sat down for his break, and one of our warehouse managers said, you don't have to stay here for your break. You're welcome to leave. And the guy, Nick, he's like, look at this space. Why would I leave? This is so comfortable. I know.
That's so good.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the text thread is hilarious. We just last night. So we introduced Nick to the group text thread, and everyone's introducing their names and the association with the numbers, and then Mark, our shipping manager, and he's like our right hand. He's there for everything. He's a big rock collector, such a rock
hound, yeah.
Rock hound. Yeah. And he loves googly eyes too. So he finds rocks that have holes in the middle that look like mouths, and he puts googly eyes over them. And he's naming his googly-eyed rocks in the text thread. This is Steve. This is whoever. It's just so goofy.
I think what I loved about that is that it was a great way to welcome Nick. It's not just hi Nick. It's there's a lot of camaraderie, and he gets to experience it immediately. Yeah. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Have you guys codified or written down what you're trying to accomplish in terms of the vibe at your company?
Wow.
No, definitely not.
No.
Yeah. What about your vision or your values, or not to get into corporate jargon too much, but these things are around because they help people express what it is you're trying to accomplish other than just selling food, right? So that's what I'm interested in, is knowing kind of, does Food for the Soul have an ethos, and if so, what is that?
Okay, for sure, yes. It's not written down. We don't have a mission statement. We don't have any those things that are corporate jargon, and yes, we totally should, and it would provide value, and less for us because I think we're one and the same on the brain waves, and that might be why we haven't done it yet. It's just because we know each other so intimately well that we don't need to, in that sense, just between us. But it would help everybody around us, and maybe even guide some of our decisions because we could look at it. But without further ado, I'm actually going to let Julie go into the ethos and what we believe in.
Yeah. Well, Henry touched on this a minute at the beginning of the podcast, and talking about removing barriers from a dietary sense. That's really, really important to us, to provide access. Removing barriers goes so far beyond the dietary sense, though. I mean, we look at every meal we make, and how can we make this more accessible to everyone. But beyond that, we so passionately believe that the outdoors belongs to everyone, and that everyone who wants to be there should be able to be there, should feel comfortable being there, should feel like they belong, should have the resources and know how to access the resources to get outside in whatever way that looks like for them. And for us, that's such a core part of why we do what we do. And I don't even know how to express how passionately we believe that this is important, and that there is so much work to be done in helping provide that access and advocating for that access for all marginalized populations to feel belonging in the outdoors. We have a long ways to go.
Yeah, it brings tears. I'm on the verge of tears right now. Just thinking about it, because it's such a core value for us. Whether it's disability to anything. Even if it's sitting in the grass and enjoying the butterflies, whatever the outdoors looks like to you, it doesn't matter. But there needs to be representation, and there needs to be amplification within that of everyone belongs here, because it's powerful. Nature is so healing. And if it's a city park, or if it's the nearest freaking tree you can sit under, or whatever it is, the access is getting really, really hard. And I've never lived in a city, and I'm so thankful for that. But I know for a fact that the concrete jungle, especially in impoverished areas, there are no trees. It's sick. So
It's also, you need to see people that look like you
Yeah.
in order to feel comfortable. You know, in order to feel a sense of belonging, you need to find people that are like you. And when you don't see people like you, it's very hard to get that access, to feel like you have the right. And that's something we all need to work on.
Sure.
And listen and help smooth that path.
Yeah.
So I hope you don't. Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I ask then. What are some concrete things that Food for the Soul is currently doing in that regard, and what are some things that you've identified that you'd like to be doing or that you could be doing?
Yeah. No, this is great. Last year we launched Project Inclusivity. So Project Inclusivity currently, I mean, it's just kind of been slow to get off the ground because, simultaneously life is moving in a million directions, but the intention is there and the basis of it is there. So we, to start off with, we hired a queer designer out of Portland, a neighboring city, to create a logo for some t-shirts and some stickers. And so this guy, Jared, he got a base fee to cover the initial design costs, and he's getting commission off of, all sales through Project Inclusivity on these designs that he created to support him. Now, that's just a small percentage of the total profits from these sales. The rest of that, we don't take anything, at least as of right now. We don't take anything, and I'll elaborate on that. Everything currently goes to Brave Trails, which is a camp based down in California that is really, really, really supportive of teenage youth, queer, and other to find their foot, like their ground, like they're just like to establish who they are and find community and to develop into beautiful, fully fledged humans that are go down that path of self-assurance and discovering self. So that's currently what we're doing with that. And I'm going to backtrack for a second. When I say we're not currently taking any money, we would never personally profit. It would never pay our paychecks. The thought is that maybe we'll kind of divide some of those profits into funding further ventures, paying more artists, paying website development, paying for, specific to Project Inclusivity specific. And it's always going to be paying a marginalized population from any creed, whatever. It's never going to be a guy that looks like me, a cisgendered white dude. It's just, I'm at the top of privilege, and why don't people like me don't need that kind of support. But there are a lot of people out there that need representation and support, and so Project Inclusivity will forever be designated as a branch of Food for the Soul that supports that ethos and that mission.
It's the platform that we want to use as we grow and have, an increasingly, I know we have a tiny little voice, we're a small company, but we want to use our growth to increase that voice and that advocacy. We're currently working with a trans man on another product to launch into Project Inclusivity, and then I have a couple more thoughts on products that we want to launch. We want to give each product its due. We don't want to just blast a page of you can buy this or this or this, but with a lot of intention, create products or collaborate with other manufacturers or so forth that can further that mission. It's about the advocacy as much as it is about the money. We're a small company. We're not raising thousands upon thousands of dollars yet, but everything we raise also gives voice, and that's the goal.
I want to wrap up by talking about growth a little bit. We've touched on it a few times here and there throughout the podcast. One thing I heard you say was that moving spaces was a huge sort of change element within your dynamic. And then I just heard you talk about, as you grow, having intention on how you want to approach advocacy. What are some other challenges that you've had with growth? Maybe staffing, I know, is very difficult for small businesses. The loop of we have to have staff to grow, but we have to grow in order to pay staff. So maybe start from there and tell a little bit about your journey and going from just you guys to having employees.
Well, as Henry mentioned, he's elected to work in the service industry so that we can pay our employees more. That's a very conscious decision on our part. We've been remarkably lucky with employees. We just hired 2 new people because we are starting our ramp for the season. But I would say almost without exception, in the 4 years we've been in business, we've had amazing employees and have been very blessed in that regard. So that has not been as much of a challenge for us as I think as it has been for some people, especially of late. Our employees take a huge amount of ownership. But scaling in of itself in terms of production is a challenge. We are in a small space. With dehydration, you have what's the word? I can't. But we can't produce like a morning shift and a swing shift because of the amount of time the dehydration takes. So every day we make food, put it in the dehydrator. It takes so many hours to dry. Take it out in the morning, package, rinse, repeat. And so there are limits to how much we can produce in a facility. And we'll stay here until we can't make it work anymore. But that is kind of always at the edge of our minds. Is in order to grow, we'll need to grow a facility each time, and the balance of when do we spend that money, when do we get an investor. Those are all very challenging aspects of what we do.
Yeah, so I'm curious as to how you're approaching those challenges. Again, we have, in our industry, we have a lot of people who are in your shoes, people who just love a certain aspect of it and want to try to turn it into a business, and then they run into things like scaling. And so I'm wondering how you've approached these challenges.
We spent the first couple of years looking for a mentor. I mean, we talked to a lot of different people. We were really lucky to find a great one and have been working with them for a year and a half now, I think. And I'm just going to, it's an organization called OMEP, which is Oregon Manufacturing Expansion Partners. Extension Partners. Sorry. Anyway, they're amazing. And we meet every other week and have been for, like I said, a year and a half. And we talk about everything, every aspect of the business, whatever is pressing on us. And sometimes I think he must think we're schizophrenic because this week we're talking about, design issues, and the next week we're talking about this, or there's like 5 things in a conversation that we're talking about because we're being challenged by all of them. But he takes it in stride. I think that is of undescribable value to find the right fit in terms of a mentor. Somebody who has experience and an outside perspective and is willing to share that. Somebody who takes the time to get to know us. That's been gold for us. And I also think, I know a lot of small businesses are trying to do it solo. We've especially, in our first few years, we talked to a lot of small business owners that were sole proprietors. That's a really hard road. And so I think that it would be doubly, triply important for those businesses to find that mentorship that is valuable to them, because Henry and I have each other to bounce ideas off of, to argue both sides, to we try not to be burned out at the same time. I mean, it's it's just there's so much of value in a partnership in terms of that struggle that I just cannot imagine doing this by myself. There are so many hats to wear for each of us. We each have this full load, and so the mentorship has been absolutely huge for us.
The financial aspect, which I think you were kind of getting at a little bit, we have done this, especially in the beginning, a lot out of our own pockets. We're like, Julie's condo is on lean. Like we're putting a lot of our lives at stake to make this happen. And like, the level at which you like throw yourself deeper into that hole depends on how far along you are in the business. In the very beginning, you're like, well, no, I'm not going to like put a lien on my house or my condo. But like, you're 2.5 years in, you're like, people like this stuff. Like, we should keep doing this. Like, it seems to be working. But then also, we did the whole Friends Family Fools round in the beginning. We we've gotten some investment throughout the way, like little minor bits. We've luckily never had to give up equity. And then just most recently, we partnered and got investment from, I think I can say his name. I think he said he's cool with it.
Yeah.
Do you know who Glenn Van Pesky is? Yeah. We got a bit of introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Glenn Van Pesky, the originally founder of Gossamer Gear, is living here in Bend, and he found us at Farmers Market when we very first started, and he was just really nice and really liked our food. Gave us a really cute, tiny, minimalist business card, and he just stayed in touch. And we've been talking over the years, and then he threw it out there at one point, like last year, rather serendipitously, like, "Hey, if you guys ever need support or anything, like, just let us know." We're like, well, since you mention it, actually, it's really expensive running a business, and there are some capital issues. So. Once again, still have not given up ownership. Glenn has done this out of the goodness of his heart. He will still make money off of it in the long run, of course, as any good investment strategy should go. But nonetheless, like, he's done this in a way that's just like, no, I want to give you guys that boost. It's not a crazy amount of money. It's kind of just enough to get us over the little hump. But it's massive. It's really
And along with that comes Glenn's expertise.
Yes.
I mean, Glenn is open to business. He's grown a business. He's gone through so many of the things that we are going through. And he's a truly smart guy. And so we have not just his financial, backing and support, but we have Glenn. And in of itself, that's pretty remarkable. So I think that, Henry and I did bootstrap this for almost 4 years, and that, my condo's on the line. My retirement savings is in the business. I mean, we are all in. This is
depleted.
Yeah, but there are points where you just have to have that money to grow. You have to have that money to buy new equipment. To grow into a new facility, to transition from one kind of packaging to the next level of packaging. Those are investments that have to happen.
Even if they save you money, it's going to cost you $20,000 up front, and that's not small change.
Yeah,
it's big.
And it might take you 6 months to even start to see that come back, but those things have to happen. And I think that the other aspect of what you're talking about is figuring out when to do those things, and making the decision is to when to make those investments, and how long can you go without making them without hurting the business. Those are all very challenging questions, and so I think between Shane at OMEP and Glenn, we have two great resources to help us with that. But at the end of the day, Henry and I still have to make that decision for ourselves.
Right.
One of the great OMEP advice pieces we got was just keep your mistakes to like small spider size and not big scary dragon size, and you're going to be okay. Make the decisions based on like, okay, what's like your potential scary side of what you're about to do. Keep it small. You're bootstrapped. You don't have the flexibility to make big mistakes. So just take the time.
So you're kind of thinking as you approach a decision, you're kind of thinking, okay, what's the worst case scenario if this fails, and that the level of chaos has to be below a certain threshold in order for you to even approach making the decision.
Yeah, the new bags are a perfect example of that. So, we have spent a year-ish designing and getting the bags all ready for production, and there's going to be a fill line on the bag, and we're not going to have to hand label every single bag anymore, and we're so excited about it. And then we're like looking at the numbers, and it's like, okay, so we know if we scale our growth at this much for this year, we're going to have to buy approximately this amount of bags for the entire year. What would it look like if we bought 50% of that? What would it look like if we bought 25% of that? And we're kind of going through all these numbers, and we're like, oh, and it's also going to be like a 6 or 8 week lead time because they have to ship from overseas on a boat. And what if that boat gets stuck in the Suez Canal? I don't freaking know, and there's just like your mind, you can hear my voice. Like your mind starts to spiral, and you're like, okay, whoa. What if, let's talk some bad situations here. What if we get these bags and for whatever reason we can't think of, the bags suck, they don't work, and we can't use them. We've just invested $15,000 for like a 3-month supply of bags. And that's money that we can't afford to lose. That's really, really, really valuable money. Okay, so let's not buy all of our full-size meal size bags. What if we just buy the new bags, the printed bags for the oatmeals only? We only have 3 products. Even though we sell quite a bit of the oatmeals, it's the thing that we sell the least. And so we make this decision, like, let's not invest so much money into the whole thing when we already have a system that works.
Yeah.
Let's invest a small amount of money into the new process, test the process out. Is there anything wrong with the bags? No? Cool. We go for the big step. If there is nothing wrong with the bag, cool. We're out $2,000. Small spider, not big dragon.
Mitigating that loss and the risk is, for us that's manageable. Can we afford to lose $2,000? Yeah, it sucks, of course, but we can. And then we can test the process. And both Henry and I, when we sort of came with the solution, it's like, okay, got it, good, got that one, yeah. And that's I think the way to approach all of those really big decisions is, how do we mitigate this to a risk that we can manage, that we can live with?
Awesome. That's very actionable advice. Thank you for sharing that experience and wisdom. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. I've taken up a bunch of your time. Is there anything that you wanted to chat or talk about that you haven't gotten a chance to bring up yet, or?
No, you have some great questions.
Yeah,
Questions we haven't gotten before. That's great.
This is
Cool. That. Yeah, that's always good to hear. Where can people find you online?
Instagram is a great one if you want to get a feel for the brand. That's going to be Food for Soul, SOLE, like a boot print. Food for Soul. Our company name is Food for the Soul, so that would be the website, foodforthesoul.co, not .com. The internet's running out of this. And I guess we're on Facebook too. Yeah, a little bit. Mostly Instagram and the website is the best way to keep tabs on us.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time, Henry and Julie. Food for the Soul. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. Can't wait to try that biscuits and gravy.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ed.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Backpacking Light podcast. The Backpacking Light podcast is advertising free, thanks to the membership fees paid by Backpacking Light members. A BackpackingLight.com membership gives you access to 20 years of archives, forums, and online courses. And don't forget, if you're an unlimited member, you'll get the video version of this podcast for free as a part of your membership. So please consider supporting this podcast and become a member right now at backpackinglight.com/membership.
You can download the show notes for this episode at backpackinglight.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. It does help other people find the show.
Thanks for listening to the Backpacking Light podcast. I'm Andrew Marshall.
And I'm Ryan Jordan. And if we can leave you with one parting message, it's this: pack less, be more, because lighter is better. Happy trails, everybody.
So I shoulder my backpack, walk away from the